be afraid. You're dead. I run things here now.
Entities, ghosts, spirits.
I've just seen a ghost. If I was you, I would be very afraid. I was frightened. People leave this room feeling violently sick.
This is the morning before I suffer. Sat down to write my last lines to you, thinking that my soul will shortly be at rest in heaven. This is my worst nightmare. Are there any spirits here with me now? Sleep well, and don't have nightmares. Hello, my name's Richard Felix, and for the past 14 years I've been searching for ghosts, and for the past 7 years I've owned Derby Gaol. Behind these doors lies one of the most haunted buildings in the British Isles, and I thought it was long overdue that we created a DVD to tell the story of some of those inmates that are still around. So why not join me as I take you inside and introduce you to some of the ghosts of Derby Gaol.
Hey up! Let's think our appointments here. Hang on. I knows your face, don't I? We've had you in here before. I never forgets the face of a felon, you know. I'll open up for you. Welcome back. My name's William Eaton. Welcome to Derby Gaol. I'm one of the jailers that haunts this place, along with many, many of its famous inmates. Come in.
Mr. Eaton, good day to you. I know that you controlled this place for many, many years. Now, I don't know whether you know this, but you're dead. I run things here now. But if you're prepared to talk to me, I've never ever interviewed a ghost before. Perhaps we could actually find out a few more of the tales of Derby Gaol. Is there somewhere we could perhaps go for a brief interview? To the cells. Why not? Thank you very much. Oh my God. I think that I should be afraid.
Yes, if I was you, I would be very afraid.
William, is it all right to call you William?
No, it won't be all right. Mr. Eaton, to you.
Tell me something. How do you become jailer of Derbyshire County Jail? I mean, did you get paid for it?
Paid? Course not. You don't get paid. You gets the money from the inmates. See, I robs them, just like they used to rob other folks. I makes things very, very difficult for them in here, because that's what they deserve, see.
And in the 39 years that you were actually here as jailer, I would imagine you saw lots of changes. What were conditions really like here?
39 years here. 39 years. as jailer, 1793 till 1832. That, my friend, is a long time. I've seen some changes, but our runs a very clean jail here. In fact, we scrapes the walls every 6 months.
And tell me, who were some of the most memorable inmates? Those people that, for want of a better word, were guests of yours.
Memorable inmates, I should say so. Well, 39 years of them. It's hard to remember them all. I think we start with James Preston. Poor old devil, he was 70. We hanged him for the murder of a bastard child. Says he didn't do it. Told me he didn't do it. And I believes him. He still lingers round here with me. Still haunts the place. Waiting for justice to be done. He'll not get that. He'll be here forever. 1812, that was a good year. We built a new drop up here in front of Friargate. Before then, we used to take him in a cart all the way to Normanton Road. They used to sit on the back of the cart, on top of the coffin. The coffin they'd made for themselves in here the week before their execution. Chalked the name on top of it, we did, so we knew who it belonged to. And we took them up to the top of the road and hanged them there. Very inconvenient that was, very difficult to get the horse and cart through the crowds of people lining the way all the way up Green Lane. Stopped at every pub they did on the way, bought them a pint. By the time they got to the Gallows, they didn't care anymore. So anyway, they devised this new drop with a trapdoor, but they didn't die any quicker. All it was a more convenient way of taking the ground from underneath them. The rope was tight, you see, but if they got a few bob left, if I hadn't taken it all off them, they'd give it the executioner and he'd hasten their end. He'd climb up the ladder, stand on the shoulders and push down. Strangled them quicker, you see. And if they didn't do that, him and his mate used to grab hold of the legs, fall down on them, play bell ringing, and that strangled them and all. That's where the saying comes from, pull the other leg. But what about 1817? Did I have a good year? Oh, 4 men hanged for setting fire to haystacks in front of the jail. Poor devils. And then, of course, same year, Pentridge Revolution. Brandreth, Turner and Ludlam. Guess what? Can hang, draw and quarter them they were. The Prince Regent signed the death warrant. So we hanged them for half hour, cut off their heads one at a time. You know, it took them 3 blows to take off Jeremiah Brandreth's head. He wasn't happy about it. Thought he was going to go to hell. That's why he's still here. That's why he still lingers round this place to this day. Well, would you risk it? Would you float up to them pearly gates and expect St. Peter to let you in? No way. That's why so many of them still down here with me. We don't want to go to hell, do we?
Thank you, Mr. Eaton, for that exclusive interview. Really not much point in me bolting you in, is there? I'm standing in the central corridor of Derby Gaol. To the left and right-hand side of me, prison doors, and behind them, the original prison cells. The building was originally, including the cells down here, 4 stories high and 3 times as long as what you see now. It was built in 1756, the second of 3 county jails here at Derby and was demolished in 1840. Luckily for us, they preserved the basement cells, the dungeons, the condemned cells, the night cells as foundations for the new tenemented houses that were built in 1840. Before 1588, there wasn't a jail here at Derby. After a statute passed by Henry VIII, giving us the right to have a jail here, it took us until the reign of Queen Elizabeth to build one. Before then, all prisoners were taken to Nottingham, tried and imprisoned there. What I'm going to do is attempt to explain to you why it is so haunted. We're going to be interviewing people who have experienced things down here, including me, and I'll be showing you some of the interiors that are still preserved of this old jail, and at the same time explaining to you why I think this building is so haunted.
Hi, my name's Ed Felix, and for the past 5 years I've been conducting ghost walks and vigils inside this building, Derby Jail. During that time, I've heard so many stories from people that have visited here and people that have stayed here of ghostly phenomena. Not only during the vigils, but even when people have been here for a few minutes as part of a ghost walk, things have still happened. Strange smells, such as roses inside the cells. Bumps, bangs, dramatic drops in temperature, even figures being seen. So many of these stories over the past 5 years, so many of them that we can't find a logical explanation for. Are they really ghostly? Are they in people's minds? Even as a skeptic, I have to believe some of the stories that people tell me. Some of them will be recounted during this DVD. Maybe you could shed some light on it if you come here one day. Who knows? Is this place really haunted?
Patricia, as resident medium of Derby Jail,
Yes.
how haunted is it?
Well, each time I come down here, it's different. I've seen quite a lot of different entities, if you like, shadowed figures, a large one over near the fireplace, which when I turned to look at it dispersed, but was certainly there on the periphery of my vision for quite a while. Having gone into the cells at various times, I've seen the silhouette of a man in the debtors' cell, halfway down on the left-hand wall, quite a tall man. Down the corridor to the left here, I've seen a head-height haze, which is like the heat haze that you get on a road. And that's moved
what
along.
I saw, of course, down there.
Saw it moving along there. One night I got a long journey home. It was a cold night, so I nipped into the loo before my long journey home. Happened to glance across at the debtor's cell, and as the door was slightly open and we'd left a candle in there, I saw a little bare foot just by the candle, and as I looked and concentrated on it to see I'd really seen what I thought I'd seen, it dispersed. I've also heard quite a lot of noises in the debtor's cell and in the condemned cell, seen people overcome with emotion for no apparent reason, and we've seen a lot of spirit lights. We also have a child who wanders round and about. People have felt him take their hand. He still comes and goes. He's not a regular visitor, but he does come, you know, often enough to be known that he's still around and still interested in what we're doing. I think that we're still finding people, entities, ghosts, spirits. They've not all shown themselves yet. As I say, it does change each time I come here. The energies vary, but there are things that are still being found, and it's always interesting, always interesting.
So there are lots of different spirits.
Lots of different spirits.
We're not talking, obviously you see a grey haze, a dark shadow, you hear footsteps. I mean,
Yes.
that could be the same ghost.
It could be, and of course different people work in different ways. They'll sense things in different ways. You get clairsentience where you will pick up fragrances, emotions, aches and pains, all of this sort of thing, and that may be somebody's forte. That will be how they tune in or communicate. you'll get others that will give you information clairaudiently, and some people will pick up quite strongly in that way. But you'll also get people whose strength is clairvoyance, and they will see things either out there or in here. And so we'll all be getting information in different ways, but some of these informations may overlap. So not quite sure whether they're all the same.
Yeah, but in other words, in your opinion, we haven't actually got to the bottom of all of the
Absolutely
goings
not.
on that are
Absolutely not. No, it's a constant enjoyment and an interest, and there's always something a little bit different, such as when the cell door moved all on its own, the one that's just leaning against the wall in there lurched on its own when we were actually filming and there was nobody touching it. So there's always something new going on.
And hopefully more to come.
Yes, hopefully so. I'm sure there will be. I don't think we've plumbed the depths, not by a long chalk.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thanks.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
This is the corridor where I saw a ghost. It was about 4 years ago. It was the last Friday in November, and it was 3:20 in the afternoon, daylight. I was standing in the kitchen and the telephone went. I answered the phone and there was nothing farther from my mind than ghosts. I was chatting away to this chap from Derby City Council when this grey figure glided down this corridor, and it was only when I looked through this window that I saw it gliding past. It was as grey as grey. It was distinctly grey. It was a haze, but I couldn't see through it, and I can't tell you if it was male or female. Not only did I see it, but I sensed it, and I was frightened. And I actually was talking to the guy on the phone, and I said, I've just seen a ghost. I put the phone down and went to the front of the counter and stuck my head round here, because like everyone else that sees ghosts, I converted straight away to reality. Oh, someone must have come in. We're not open, but they've walked in. And of course there was no one there. I actually lost it, if you like, between here and here. And when I looked through here, it was gone. I went back onto the phone and I said to him, I hope you don't mind, but I may well stay on the phone longer than we'd originally anticipated. Why? He said, what's the problem? I said, because when I put this phone down, I'm alone with what I've just seen. So we chatted for a while, and then I felt a proper fool and thought, well, I have to go now, so put the phone down. And then thought, oh my gosh, I've now got to go through there, out here, and up this corridor, where I've just seen a ghost. It was gone. It wasn't there. I left pretty quick, arrived back at the Heritage Centre for everyone to say to me, gosh, Richard, you look as if you've seen a ghost, which I had. But the amazing thing is that although I was frightened, I felt as if I'd won the lottery. I'd seen a ghost in Derby Jail. I've not seen it again. I actually came back on anniversaries of the day when I saw it, but I've never seen it again. But that doesn't mean to say I won't. I do expect to see it again one day, but hopefully not when I'm alone. One of the best doors here at Derby Jail is this corridor door, original. When they knocked the place down in 1840 and built new houses, these cellars were actually inhabited, and these doors were painted over and over and over again until you actually couldn't see any of the graffiti that's still there. I had them dipped, and we found these amazing messages from the prisoners etched on the doors. Here, the original game of hangman, with an illiterate man's message, just A, and I think it's an S. But this one, this is the best of the lot. Two men here about to be hanged. One, his feet are up there, the other's his feet are down there. And underneath it, what we thought was the word pub, P-U-B. But in fact it's not. In the middle there is an 18th century and this is P and B. And underneath it here, 1804. Guess what? In 1804, Parker and Booth were hanged here at Derby for horse stealing. Mr. Booth had been sentenced to death twice in other counties before being hanged at Derby, and he was a 6'4" giant. And even just before their hanging took place, when they scratched their effigies on this door, Booth made himself that much bigger than his accomplice Parker.
Yes, I'm Pete, I'm one of the guides, and I take the jail walk at night. And it's going back about 3 weeks now, and we were tidying up after all the paying guests had gone, and I was sweeping up in this area, and Tom was in the back, and he was doing all the putting the dishes in the dishwasher. And he shouts out, "Pete, I think there's somebody coming back," which is quite often a occurrence that happens when people have forgotten an umbrella or gloves or anything like that. And it was raining that night, so we thought nothing of it. I went to the door, opened the door, looked down the corridor, there was nobody there. The footsteps were still coming towards us. By this time Tom joined me, and we both looked down the corridor. Nothing was there, and the footsteps were still coming towards us. Quite bizarre it was. We also had quite an unnerving experience the other night. We were doing a walk, and one of the customers came up to me while we were in the Friary, which is another location that we do visit. And he says, "I used to have a few experiences." He said, "I used to work in the Howard Hotel." He says, "Actually, I used to work in the Friary as well. They were owned by the same company." And he says, "I was the bar manager and everything like that, and eventually became a manager. And while it was the Howard Hotel, which is above the jail," he says, "I went out, used to work in the cellar bar, lock it up at night, and then retire to bed. One night, I was the duty manager. I'd locked up, gone to my room, got in bed and was asleep, and I was awoken by the night porter. He knocked on the door. He says, "Have you locked somebody downstairs?" To which he replied, "No, I don't think so." So he says, "I think you'll find you have, because the doors are banging." So I got out of bed, went downstairs, and went outside, down the steps, got to the main door, and there it was, banging. Put the key in the door, and the banging stopped. Thought that was quite odd. I was half expecting somebody to be the other side of the door. So I went inside, I forgot my torch, and the light switch is right past where the cells are now. So I went along, but as I was walking along, I was tripping over things. So I said, "Well, what sort of things?" He says, "When I got to the light switch, turned the lights on, all the stools had been pulled out from the cell. What are the cells now were little snug rooms. And they used to have a table and a couple of stools in there. All the stools had been pulled out, haphazardly placed within the corridor. And these are what I'd, an hour before, just swept round the area, and everything was in its place." It was most odd. I mean, we have a couple of the guys that do the scaring have also reported hearing stools moving when they're in here by themselves. So it's something that has happened before. Even more disturbing was the second story that he related. He said he was down here, all the customers had gone, and he was tidying the bar area. He said he was behind the where the dishwasher and everything is, washing the glasses, and he heard a thump on the bar. Quite a loud thump, so he went out to investigate. And they got optics behind the bar. They hadn't been disturbed that night, no new bottles had been fitted, but one of the optics had come off the wall, and it was placed the right way up on the bar. He put it back onto the carrier and went back, carried on washing a few more dishes. He heard another thump, went back outside, investigated again, and a different optic this time had come off, and again it was upturned, lying on the, the right way up on the bar. So he put it back on, third time lucky, went back in and started washing the glasses again. He heard another. At this point, he says he'd had enough and decided to lock the place up for the night and never came back down, that night. He had got a third story, and it related to the hotel, and it was actually the kitchen area of the actual hotel, which was above. He said he'd locked everything up, and he was going around opening up in the morning. He knew where everything was because he'd locked up the night before. He went upstairs, or went to the kitchen area, opened the door. He said it felt a bit funny and something caught his sight about eye level. And as he opened the door more, he heard a clatter. And there was all the crockery on the floor, all the knives and forks. And what it was, he'd seen them hovering at eye level and they just dropped. And he'd only cleaned them the night before, placed them out onto the draining board, and they were all in the middle of the floor. It was quite bizarre, but it's interesting to find out people that have worked in the place before it was a jail, of some of the stories that you can then relate to other guests, and they might even come up with some other stories then. It's something that we try to push forward with the guests, that they relate stories to us. So if you do come on the walks, please talk to us.
This cell is as haunted as any other, and obviously you know why. The number of people that can't stay in here, that feel sick, that burst into tears, that have to leave, the number of people on seances that we conduct in here that pick up on various spirits that are still around, makes this as haunted as anywhere else in the building. This is the actual trigger object that has become quite famous now and was actually used on this very bed. This is a real prison cot, and it genuinely did move on a piece of paper. The amazing thing about it is that although people may say, yes, someone could have tugged the paper, which they didn't, nobody can explain why or how the paper bubbled up underneath the cross, because there is absolutely no way that anybody could get their hands underneath to make it do that. That was very, very genuine. And I must be honest with you, we've only ever had one person spend the night here alone, a lady from Australia, and she volunteered to stay. The following morning, she asked me if I paid someone to walk up and down the corridor outside. And I said, no, of course not. No, I let you come in for nothing. No, I wouldn't pay anybody to do that. She said, well, someone was. Perhaps it was the cleaners upstairs. And I said, I'm sorry, it's Saturday night. No cleaners on Saturday night. She said, well, I actually tried to get through the whole night without using my torch. So in other words, she was in here in the dark. But she said, about 3:30, and of course, it's always about 3:30 in the morning. She said, I was lying on this bed in my sleeping bag when I felt something pulling the sleeping bag off me. I sat up, she said, and grabbed hold of the sleeping bag and pulled it back and said, is there someone here? No reply. She said, I went to settle back and noticed that my pillow had gone. So she said, in the dark, I reached down to find the pillow. The pillow wasn't there. So I had to get my torch. I shone the torch into the corners of the room and then realised that the pillow was by the door. She got up, she picked up the pillow, she put it back on here, and she went back to sleep. How she managed that, no one knows.
Well, I've been doing ghost walks and vigils for nearly 5 years, centred around this building, Derby Jail. For the majority of the time that I've been doing it, I've never really experienced anything that I can't find a logical explanation for, until one night in particular, inside this room, the condemned cell, with a group of people, funnily enough, who were actually jailers from Stoke-on-Trent. We came in here to do a session of table tipping. Up until that day, but I didn't believe in table tipping. I thought that it was just people getting carried away, moving a table subconsciously. Well, that night, something definitely happened in here. 6 of us, in fact, sat round a table just like this one in front of me, with our hands resting on the table, and we started to ask questions. We asked for some kind of movement of the table to show us if there was anybody here from the spirit world. Well, the table started to rock. Being sceptical, I asked everybody to put their hands lightly on top of the table with no thumbs. It continued to rock. Still asking more questions, the table then started to shift round in sections to the point where two ladies were actually stuck between this table and the wall, pinned up against it. We then travelled from here at the back of the cell in different sections, staggered right up to the door and almost got halfway out into the corridor outside. I'd actually turned the lights on halfway through to try and find if somebody was messing around, if somebody was kicking it. Nobody was doing it. I can't find a logical explanation as to why that happened. Was it ghostly? Was it us getting carried away? I don't know.
I'm now in the debtors cell here at Derby Jail. Not quite so bad. You've actually got a window. You've got daylight. You can see out, which is quite something. The reason we know it's a debtor's cell is because on the door of this cell is an amazing message from J. Taylor of Measham for a £10 debt, 1807. If you owed money, you were imprisoned. You were not allowed out of prison until you'd paid your debts. The idea was that you were allowed out of the jail in the daytime to work in one of the day rooms. Big window, fire, and if you were a tailor, shoemaker, then you brought your wares in with you and you worked. And then you sold your wares either to visitors at the jail or possibly even the inmates. But before you left the jail, you had to pay all of your debts, including the debts of the jailer. That was for extra straw, beer and wines, food and candles. And then before you left, you had to pay the blacksmith to knock off your chains. This, again, is very haunted. In fact, some say more haunted than the condemned cell which is next door. On many occasions, people leave this room feeling violently sick. When this room was being done up, the builder, John Toon, he was here alone working on this window, repairing it. Twice while he was in here on a Saturday, the door to this cell closed, as if by unseen hands. He thought it was his son, Jason, who'd come back and was playing tricks on him. But unbeknown to him, Jason was in Nottingham with his girlfriend shopping. He also said he felt violently sick and had to keep leaving the cell and going outside. John's comments were, probably the coffee I had that morning. But of course, we know differently. We know how haunted this cell is and how many other people as well have to leave this cell because they feel so nauseous.
Chris, Eleanor, you're members of the Durham Paranormal group, and it's going to be quite interesting to actually get the views of a paranormal investigation group on Derby Jail. And I know you've been coming here now for quite a long time, but what on earth started you off coming here?
Well, we've been interested in the paranormal for many years, and we caught a programme on Discovery Channel several years back about this place, and couldn't wait to get here.
That wasn't one where they actually brought a lady that had seen a ghost outside. They met her in a hotel, brought her here.
That's the one, yes.
Yeah, me and Wayne Anthony waiting for her in here.
That's right, yes.
That was one. Do you know I've never seen that?
Haven't you?
No. And yet they tell me it's one of the best programmes ever done on Derby Jail.
Yes, it was very impressive, certainly.
And that's what got you into it?
Yes, yes. That's what brought us here in the first place.
And since then, of course, it's what? I mean,
it's escalated.
We can't keep you away from the place, can we?
No, absolutely not.
Because I mean, now you obviously do sleepovers here for the. But I mean, this is what I want to know. This is a jail. All jails are haunted. We know that. But why is Derby Jail as haunted as it is?
There's so much of it still natural, and there's so much here, and the energy that you created with what you've done with the place has attracted more people back.
Right.
And people coming that are interested in the paranormal are releasing more energy, which are attracting the spirits back again. So they find here they can get energy, they can also play and see people, so they keep coming back and haunting the place and having fun.
Well, now, so there's so many recorded sightings, sounds, smells, you name it. The thing I'm not sure about is someone that sees a dark shadow, a grey figure, something that pushes the candle off the table, slams the door, makes footsteps. Is it going to be one ghost, or is it going to be 6 different ghosts? Do you understand?
Yeah, it could be one ghost, it could be several ghosts. I suspect it's probably several spirits, but not necessarily 6.
No. I mean, that's what I'm going to say next.
Yeah.
How many do you think? Because you're also you're psychic, aren't you?
Yes.
So how many do you think are here?
Resident, you've got about 9 associated with the place.
Right. Visitors?
No, you've got a good 3 or 4 that are permanently here and never leave. One
Right.
being by Simpson himself. He never leaves the premises.
Now he is for want of a better word, the patriarchal figure of Derby Jail. He was a jailer here for
Yes.
many years, and people pick him up all the time, don't they?
They sure do, and he picks them up as well. Sometimes literally.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I see. What lifts people up?
We have had one particular person in the debtor cell clearly lifted off the floor, so much so he was having to bow his head because of the ceiling.
Oh, I say. I bet that bothered him a bit.
No, he hadn't realised what was happening to him.
But you could see him. People could actually.
People in the room could actually see him.
Wow.
Once we brought the session to a close, he sort of dropped to the floor and we had to escort him out of the cell outside to get some fresh air. But after 10 minutes he was fine and raring to go again.
Asking for more.
Really? Now, what about people actually because we've got some famous spirits here, or famous people that died here or executed here. Do people actually see them? Do they recognise them?
We've got 15 recorded sightings on 8 different occasions of Jeremiah Brandreth, identified from a photograph that we took of the dummy you had made to look like him that went up in flames a few years back.
That's right.
Identified from that dummy, and there's been 15 people actually recognise him and see him, and they're able to tell us separately who it is.
But this is not necessarily people that saw the dummy, because remember,
No,
people see
that
it.
was
Think,
some
oh, that's
years
what he
ago.
looked like.
No, that was some years ago. This is a photograph we've got on our laptop computer that we don't show them until after the evening session's over. We don't show them anything until after it's all happened. We won't tell them because suggestions are a very powerful tool.
Yes, of course. That's the whole point. So, I mean, he is the most famous person. And now you see, my problem sometimes is, we've seen the ghost of Anne Boleyn. How do you know it's Anne Boleyn? Because it's wearing a Tudor dress and it's associated with the Tower of London. You see where I'm coming from, don't you? But if they're actually recognising from a picture afterwards, that's different. That's much more authentic for me than just someone because it's wearing a costume similar. Oh, it's that person.
No, they see a black shadow to start with and they feel something there, right in front of the nose. And then they'll start to focus and the face will come in. They don't see the body, they don't tell us how they're dressed apart from this tricorn hat and the hair, and then they describe him and we show him the photographs later and they actually say yes, that's him, and then we tell them the name.
And of course we're getting people coming from all over the country, so they're not aware of Jeremiah
They know nothing
Brandreth
about
before
the
they come
place.
here.
That's the whole
Precisely.
point,
We've
isn't
had
it?
them
Yeah.
from Scotland, right down south.
Yeah, and it's still the same person.
Still the same person.
Any others?
Someone called Amos.
Hmm.
He's very distinctive by the fact he's got a patch over one eye and he smells foul.
This is a bit. I presume this is Amos Mason
Yes, that's
that,
him.
that was executed
Yes.
here.
Yeah.
Hence the fact he's obviously still around then.
He comes to visit Simpson to get his own back.
Really? Do you have arguments and not fights as such, but I mean, in the spirit world between them?
Yes, they try and stop each other communicating with us and squabble over things, and yeah.
Wow. Now tell me something. Your spirit guide, which
Thomas.
I didn't know about until you mentioned today.
Thomas, I didn't know myself until I read the Penny Dreadful here, because he told me what he'd done. I knew exactly what he'd done.
This is Thomas Hopkinson.
Yes, I found that a few visits ago when you were actually moving from the Heritage Centre to here. I was reading The Penny Dreadful.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I read that I realised that my Thomas is Thomas Hopkinson that was hung for highway robbery.
Well, I'll
Bad
be
lad in life.
Oh, he was terrible. I mean, he was sentenced to hang for setting fire to haystacks in 1817 and should have been hanged with 4 others, but he turned King's evidence against them, got off with his life, and I think he was only 19 or 20 when he was finally hanged. But he was a bad lot. And yet you say that he's a nice lad. He
never harmed a human.
No, there you see. He did a lot of bad stuff to animals. He stole a lot of stuff, and then eventually was caught for highway robbery.
Oh, we trust him with our lives.
Really? Do you know that is for you to actually be in contact with him, Thomas Hopkinson, because I've read about him in great detail. We have things about him in here. That is amazing. One day I'll sit in on a séance with you and see if I can have a word with him.
With pleasure.
Because that would be quite something.
Well, you're welcome to join us.
Now, you've also, of course, over the period that you've been here, you've got quite a lot of stuff on tape, on camera, recorded, EVP and stuff, have you?
EVP mainly, yes. Unfortunately, they don't seem too keen to play for the cameras.
Really? So tell me something, just to finish. How haunted is Derby Jail?
It's one of the most haunted buildings I've ever been in. It's also my favourite.
Really?
Yes.
That's
why I keep coming back.
Yeah. No need to say any more. Chris, Eleanor, thank you very much indeed.
Cool.
Thank you.
This room, again, is notoriously haunted and is a much bigger room than any of the others. There are various reasons for that. Number one, this was used as a day room. It had a large fire and a big window. And if you were a debtor, then you would be allowed in here to work. You could keep your fingers warm and you would have light to be able to work. But much more important than that, this was also known as the association room. And the trauma, the despair, the anguish and the tears that would have been shed here in this room makes it probably one of the most haunted rooms of the whole jail. Before you were executed, this is the room you'd be brought to meet your family, to greet your family, to say all of your farewells to your family and your friends, here in this very room. In 1817, before Jeremiah Brandreth was hanged and beheaded, his wife and children walked all the way from Sutton in Ashfield to Derby to say their farewells to him here in this very room. And how many more miserable wretches were brought in here to say goodbye to their loved ones. The emotion that must be emblazoned, impregnated into both the stone and bricks here in this room means that it is extremely haunted. Various people have been seen. A man has been seen sitting in a red coat here in the corner. A man with a bald head and a leather body warmer but with no sleeves has been seen in here. Frequently dark shadows are seen in here, and again an awful sense of uneasiness is sensed here in this room. A few years ago we had an email from a gentleman who was finishing a ghost walk, and the email said, "I have ventured this email to save the embarrassment of disbelief. Last night I was on your ghost walk with my wife sitting in the corner at the round table. Your guide was finishing off standing by the doorway, and I noticed a figure that was suspended behind him as if it was hanging from the wood above the door of the cell. It was wearing either a black shawl or a black shroud, and it was above the floor, very gently swaying backwards and forwards. I thought it was one of your lads acting daft, until I realised that no one else in the room was laughing. Even my wife didn't see it." He then went on to say, Could you explain this to me? Could you tell me if anyone has witnessed this before? Which they hadn't. But what we did do was sent him a copy of a penny dreadful here in this room concerning John and Benjamin Jones, burglars from Ashbourne, who hanged themselves in the cell the night before their execution. The following morning, the jailer came to get them out, and he found the two brothers hanging dead from the wood above the door of the cell. The jailer fetched the prison surgeon to bleed them, to revive them, but they were dead, and they buried them beneath the gallows in unconsecrated ground. Now, I don't know whether this room was also used for a period of time as a condemned cell. Did that gentleman actually see one of the two Jones brothers, a reenactment of their suicide, when he saw one of them hanging above the door of this cell? Nobody knows. Now, as the association room, this room would also be used on the morning of a hanging. This was the biggest room down here, and the local magistrates, the High Sheriff, and various invited guests would come here to this room. Before the execution, they would have a hangman's breakfast of devilled kidneys and bacon. And then the condemned would be brought into this room. They would be able to view them, to talk to them. And then the hangman would come in with his rope and his straps, and would fix the halter or the rope over the neck of the poor condemned person. The blacksmith would come in here as well and knock off the heavy chains like this that would have been round the neck and round the legs. These would be knocked off before the execution, and the hands would then be bound in front, not at the back, and the legs, of course, were never tied. Then the unfortunate person or persons would be led out of this room with the procession behind them to the gallows. No wonder this room is so haunted.
Well, my name's Paul, as you said. I'm one of the lucky few people that get to work here all night long with members of the public. We get to spend literally all night doing fantastic things. We do everything from sounds to glass divination, table tipping, to just plain old vigils where we're sitting in cells in the complete dark. Now, unlike most haunted buildings, we do find that this place, above all others, has such a phenomenal amount of energy just absorbed in the actual foundations of the building, that no matter who comes or what we do, there is always something to find. And even though I've been doing this for over a year and a half now, every night I always find something new, which is phenomenal myself as a paranormal investigator. I find it absolutely fascinating that I can always seem to find something new to experiment with. I mean, we can set up night vision cameras, we can walk around with EMF meters, ionization, laser thermometers, all these wonderful gizmos and gadgets to prove to people that the spirits are here. But at the end of the day, you don't need any of them. All you need to do is stand quietly with other people in a dark, condemned room. And before you know, the spirits are literally crawling out of every corner. Not to try and come and hurt you, just to come and greet you. To come and find out who you are, why you're here, to tell you why they're here. And that's a fascinating thing. Of all the people that have spent time in these four walls, now I'm one of them. I've spent as much time here as a condemned man. You know, sometimes I feel maybe I was a condemned man and that's why I've spent so much time here. But you can't get away from the fact that there are so many spirits and so many wonderful things to find here. I'm quite lucky because we do, like I say, we do play with the night vision cameras, the EMF meters. So over the period of time, it's sod's law that we're going to find so many things actually caught on camera. We have lots and lots of archive of orbs. You know, we have archive of dust to compare them against. We have archive of shining torchlights to see dust in the beam of the torchlight to show there is millions of dust particles in the air constantly. But to say if you record 12 hours of footage and see just 3 dust particles, it can't happen. You know, we've caught on camera shadows around the jail when there's been no possibility of a human shadow. We lock off cameras, lock off areas, set motion sensors, and all these equipment constantly and always seems to get triggered. Or they seem to pick things up on camera. We can spend the rest of the night then looking for the logical reason to find why there would be a shadow on infrared camera, past the point where no human would go. But they are there. One of them particularly seems to the eye to be wielding an axe, slowly but surely lifting it high above his shoulders, pausing for a moment, just to bring it bludgeoningly down on some poor guy's neck. Maybe it is the replay of a memory. Maybe it's an actual spirit. Whatever it is, it interests the hell out of me.
After they no longer used the cart to convey the prisoners to the county gallows at the top of Normanton Road, they built what was called the New Drop in 1812, literally behind me, right in the centre of the building. The first 2 men hanged there were Tomlinson and Cook. They were burglars, hanged in public as all executions were. And from 1812 until 1825, when the last public execution took place in front of this building, that of George Batty for rape, there would have been thousands of people here, standing in Friargate, watching the poor wretches kicking, writhing, choking and vomiting here in front of this very building. The best of all, November the 7th, 1817, when the 3 ringleaders of the Pentridge Revolution, Jeremiah Brandreth, George Turner and Isaac Ludlam, were hanged and beheaded here on this very spot. They'd been sentenced to be hanged, drawn and quartered, but the Prince Regent, when signing their death warrant, commuted the drawing and quartering. They were hanged for half an hour, taken down quite dead and laid one at a time on the beheading, drawing and quartering block that had been made specially. 2 black-handled knives were ready, 2 black-handled axes were ready, and sawdust was strewn all over the scaffold. The scaffold was 10 feet high, and there were 6,000 people standing here in Friargate, including the poet Shelley. Soldiers stationed at each end of Friargate in case there was trouble, as they were taken down one at a time, laid on the block and beheaded. The first one was Jeremiah Brandreth. The executioner, a large Derbyshire miner, took 3 blows to hack off Brandreth's head. He then picked up the head by its hair, holding it up in front of the crowd, and shouted the words, "Behold, the head of the traitor Jeremiah Brandreth." Ludlam and Turner followed. They were then bundled into the coffins, bodies and heads, taken in the prison cart down Friargate and buried in a single deep grave in St Werburgh's churchyard. And so ended here in front of Derby Gaol England's last revolution. I'm right in the centre of the building, but below, where it was demolished in 1840. This is new stone. All of this here is the stonework of the original Derby Gaol. Here, I only found recently the grill. This is the area where debtors, if they had no money and could do no work, would have to beg. People passing by would actually bring food, possibly money, and warm clothing, mattresses, straw, you name it, for the prisoners that were begging through the iron bars that would have been on the other side of this boarded up aperture. Some say that this area is haunted. A lot of people say that many of the ghosts emanate from the central part of the building. And the number of people that I've actually sent off to do vigils in the early hours of the morning and told them to come round here, come down here to this area, sit on the stairs. And the number of times that people have actually left early and fled back, come back to the light and the warmth of our part of the jail, terrified of the things that have happened to them here on these very steps. So, why is this place so haunted? I must be honest, it's partly the church's fault. We only seem to see ghosts since Christianity came into being 2,000 years ago. And the church has been playing with people's minds ever since. All the unfortunates that came into this jail believed themselves to be criminals, to be sinners, and believed that they had broken one of the 10 Commandments. And so where would they go after death? They'd go to hell. What would you do? Try it on at the pearly gates with St. Peter, or stay here? And that's what they've done. From the year 1800, there were over 200 hanging offences in this country. You could be hanged for poaching, burglary, stealing a horse, appearing on the street with a sooty face. You could also be hanged for murder. So you may as well be hung for sheep as a lamb. So how do you make the punishment fit the crime if someone's done a murder instead of stealing a sheep? Playing with their minds again. Most people in the olden days craved a decent burial. They wanted to be buried in consecrated ground with the last rites, a burial service and a headstone. And they also wanted to be buried whole. Part of the sentence for a murderer was that after you were hanged, you were either publicly dissected in the Shire Hall in St Mary's Gate, or gibbeted. That's hung up 30 feet high in a metal cage near the scene of the murder. In both those instances, your body would not be whole. In the case of gibbeting, the crows would peck at your eyes and peck at your flesh until there was nothing but bones lying on the ground. With dissection, of course, you were carved up into small pieces. The bones were boiled to remove the meat and then made into skeletons, and your skin was tanned and possibly made into books telling the story of the crimes that you'd done. In other words, you were never buried and your body was not whole. And of course, people believed in those days that on the day of judgment, when the last trumpet was blown, if the body wasn't whole, the spirit and the soul wasn't whole. And where would you go? You would be condemned to eternal damnation and burn in hell fire. The poor unfortunates spending their last nights in the condemned cells here were more in fear and trepidation of what was going to happen to them after death than the actual hanging. Because remember, life was very cheap in those days. People lived with death all the time. It was the fear of what was going to happen to them afterwards that caused them again to hang around, to stay here, to remain on this planet, on this earth, rather than going and trying it on to get into heaven, because they believed they wouldn't. They believed they were going to burn in hellfire. What they didn't understand, of course, was that in fact we go to another plane, another spiritual level. There is no judgment. We judge ourselves. And I think to a certain extent it's our duty, running places like this, to tell some of those poor unfortunate souls and spirits that still linger that actually they can go. And of course, often after ghost walks or vigils, when people leave this place, we have to explain to them that the only way that some of these spirits or souls can ever gain release from this place is by following them home. This is my worst nightmare. It's 3:30 in the morning. There isn't a soul in Friargate, and I'm here alone at Derby Gaol. I'm going down there on my own. All I've got with me is this camera and a box of matches. Something I said I'd never do, or something I said I never dare do, but I just thought I needed to do it for this DVD. I don't even know how I'm going to light the candle. There's only one way, and that's to put the box of matches in my mouth and strike it. Yes, candle. And now somehow, oh God, unlock the door. Here we go. Oh God. It's just me and whoever's in here. Candle. First time ever. Tell you something. Don't like it. Very quiet. Very still. What I'm going to endeavour to do is to go into the condemned cell on my own. 3:30 in the morning. Here we go. The only thing I have done earlier, before I left this afternoon, I've rigged up a tripod so that I'm going to sit here in the cell with the door closed, alone, and see what happens. Here we go. William said, whatever you do, Dad, make sure that the tripod is properly fixed onto the camera, otherwise you'll lose £2,000 worth of camera. Don't feel too bad, surprisingly enough. Oh God. Just me, a candle, the condemned cell of Derby Gaol. Sit and listen, sit and wait. Hear one or two people walking by, coming home late from the pub. Just thinking of all the folks that were left in this cell with their own thoughts for the last night. Especially Jeremiah Brandreth, ringleader of the Pentridge Revolution. And what I've got with me is a book with his very last letter ever written to his wife in here on the 6th of November 1817, the night before he was executed. I'm going to read a bit of it just to see if for any reason it conjures up his spirit or any others. My beloved wife, this is the morning before I suffer. I have sat down to write my last lines to you, hoping that my soul will shortly be at rest in heaven through the redeeming blood of Christ. I feel no fear in passing through the shadow of death to eternal life. So I hope you will make the promise of God, as I have, to your own soul, that we may meet in heaven, where every sorrow will cease and all will be joy and peace, my beloved. My dearly beloved wife, this is the last correspondence I can have with you, so you will make yourself as easy as you possibly can, and I hope God will bless you and comfort you, as he hath me. So my blessing attend you and the children, and the blessing of God be with you all, now and evermore. Your most affectionate husband, Jeremiah Brandreth. Jeremiah Brandreth, are you here with me now? Are there any spirits here with me now? If there is anybody here in this cell or in this prison with me now, surprisingly enough, I'm not afraid. If you are there, would you make contact with me now, please? If there's someone there, would you tap? Tap twice if there's someone here in the cell with me now. It's quite surprising because although I was terrified to actually come in, I don't feel so bad. As yet I've heard nothing. As yet, like so many other people have, I haven't seen anything, although remember, I've seen a ghost in that corridor. I wondered actually whether I'd be finishing this video by actually running out of this cell. But it looks as if I've got to settle down because I said I'm going to stay here for an hour. But it's not as bad as I thought. So all I can say to you is, I hope you've enjoyed watching this DVD. I hope that one day you all come and make a visit to Derby Jail as well. And I just wonder what's going to happen to me in the next hour. Thanks for watching. Sleep well and don't have nightmares.